All right, let's just jump right in. What if I told you that being good with money has almost nothing to do with how smart you are? Seriously. We're often taught that finance is like this hard science, like physics with all these complex formulas and rigid laws. But the reality, it's so much more like psychology. It's driven by our emotions, our biases, and the kind of unique stories we tell ourselves about how the world works.
And this quote from Morgan Housel, it absolutely nails it. Financial success isn't really about what you know, it's all about how you act. Think of it more like a soft skill. Your behavior is way, way more important than any complex spreadsheet you can build.
So we're taught to treat money like it's a science, as if we're all these perfectly rational robots making decisions based on data. But the truth is, we're emotional people. We're guided by our personal histories, our feelings, not just formulas. Knowing the technically right thing to do tells you literally nothing about what's actually going on in your head when you have to pull the trigger. Okay, so that brings up a big question. Where do these financial behaviors even come from? Well, it all starts with our own money story. See, our view of the financial world isn't shaped by some universal logic. Nope, it's shaped by our own very personal experiences. People do some pretty wild things with money, and it's easy to look at them and think, what are they doing? But here's a really powerful idea to wrap your head around. No one is actually crazy. Every single financial decision a person makes seems perfectly logical to them in that moment. Why? Because it's based on the unique story they've built from their own life. And get this, your personal experience with money is just a microscopic speck of what's happened in the world. Yet it probably dictates about 80% of your financial beliefs. Let that sink in. You've only seen this tiny, tiny fraction of the game, but you're using that little piece of information to make all your moves. For instance, think about lottery tickets. Lower-income households tend to spend a lot more on them. Now, from the outside, that might look totally irrational. But for someone who feels like they have very few other paths to a better life, the lottery might feel like their only real shot. It's a different game with different rules, all shaped by very different experiences.
So if our personal stories are the scripts we follow, then every good story needs a villain, right? Well, in our financial story, the antagonists are these common psychological biases that trick us, that cause us to make choices that sabotage our own goals. And this is exactly where the field of behavioral finance comes in. It basically throws out that old school idea of the perfectly rational investor. Instead, it accepts a simple truth. We're human. And being human is, well, it's complicated.
First up is a big one, loss aversion. We are just hardwired to fear loss. The pain of losing $100 feels way, way worse than the pleasure of gaining $100. And what does this do to us? It makes us hold on to losing investments for far too long, just hoping they'll bounce back, because the pain of actually admitting that loss is just too much.
Then you've got our own ego getting in the way. Hello, overconfidence. This is that little voice that tricks us into thinking we can't lose, that we've got it all figured out. Like Bill Gates said, success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. So true. And of course, there's good old FOMO, the fear of missing out. This is what fuels herd behavior. We see everybody else buying some hot new thing, so we jump in, usually right at the top. And then when we see everyone selling in a panic, what do? We panic and sell right at the bottom. We're not following a plan, we're just following the crowd. And hey, this isn't just a theory. The data totally backs it up. A survey of nearly 400 investors showed that their emotional well-being was intensely tied to their profits, and their mood was just as deeply impacted by losses. I mean, look at those scores. It's clear evidence that for most of us, our feelings, not cold logic, are in the driver's seat. Okay, so we're emotional, we're biased, we get it. What's the solution? Well, it's not to try and become a robot. It's to shift our goal from being perfectly rational to being consistently reasonable. Forget about that perfect plan that has the highest possible returns on a spreadsheet. The best plan is the one you can actually stick with when life gets messy. And believe me, it always gets messy. Aiming to be reasonable is just so much more realistic and sustainable for the long haul. Honestly, this might be the best guide for any financial decision you make. Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep soundly at night. That peace of mind, that right there is the real return on your investment. So what does being reasonable actually look like? Well, first we can expand our time horizon. Just zoom out. Compounding is magical, but its magic works over decades, not days. Second,
Save money just for the sake of saving. Not for a new car, but for the flexibility it buys you when life throws you a curveball. And finally, build in a margin for error. A good plan is one that already assumes it won't go perfectly.
And all of this leads us to our final and maybe most important shift in mindset. We've got to redefine what true wealth really is, because I promise you, it's not what most of us think.
We're all conditioned to believe that wealth is what you spend, right? The fancy car, the huge house. But that's the great paradox. That kind of spending is the absolute fastest way to have less money, not more.
So here's the new definition for you. Real wealth is quiet. It's invisible. It's the assets growing in your portfolio. It's the cash in your savings account. It's the fancy car you didn't buy. In short, real wealth is financial freedom.
Because ultimately, the highest dividend that money can ever pay is control over your own time. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want. That is the ultimate goal. That is being truly rich.
So let's end with this one question. Just forget all the symbols of wealth for a second and think about this. If money gave you complete and total control over your time, what would you actually do with it? Answering that question honestly, well, that might just be the most important financial decision you ever make.